2022 at 4:01. We'll begin, if everyone rise, and we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First order of business is to administer the statement of officer and oath of office for Clay Jones.
All right, Clay, if you'll step down and come to the front.
If I can get you to raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Clay Jones,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I have not directly or indirectly paid,
that I have not directly or indirectly paid,
offered or promised to pay,
offered or promised to pay,
contributed or promised to contribute
contributed or promised to contribute
any money or thing of value,
any money or thing of value,
or promised any public office or employment
or promised any public office or employment
for the giving or withholding of a vote
for the giving or withholding of a vote
at the election at which I was elected,
at the election at which I was elected,
or as a reward
or as a reward
to secure my appointment or confirmation,
to secure my appointment or confirmation,
whichever the case may be, so help me God.
whichever the case may be, so help me God.
And one more time now, this is the oath of office.
Okay.
Same thing. I state your name.
I, Clay Jones,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the duties of the office
that I will faithfully execute the duties of office
of the Zoning Board of Adjustment
of the Zoning Board of Adjustment
of the State of Texas,
of the State of Texas,
and will, to the best of my ability,
and will to the best of my ability
preserve, protect, and defend
preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution of the laws
the Constitution of the laws
of the United States and of the state.
of the United States and of the state.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, and Clay, we'll get you to sign those after the meeting.
All right, the first item on the consent agenda, only item on the consent agenda, is approval of the minutes from last meeting. Do we have a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay. Do we have to vote on that? Is that, we don't have to on that?
No, well, yes, you have to make a motion and then second, but there's no like discussion needed, you just vote.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, carries then. All right, so we have on the agenda, considering a request for variance of the zoning ordinance, section 118-427A for reduction in the minimum lot dimensions for proposed subdivision lot 12, city block 50, located on the west side of Pearl Street, approximately 600 feet south of West Austin. It's been submitted by D.W. Clark Land Investments, and this is ZBA file, ZBA 2020-06. Marlena?
Thank you, Chairman. Lana Helton, City Planner. This is a 10.5 acre tract, again, located on the west side of Pearl Street, just south of West Austin Street. The property in question is the location of a cellular tower that was built in late 2019. It actually received approval of a specific use permit from City Council in 2018. So this cell tower is subject to a specific use permit, and any changes to the tower would require them to go back and amend that specific use permit with City Council. Again, the type of request before you is a variance, and so this is a literal, a variance is something that's a deviation from the literal enforcement of the zoning ordinance in order to achieve a reasonable development of the property. And these are granted whenever owing to exceptional and extraordinary conditions where the literal enforcement of the ordinance would result in unnecessary hardship in the development of the property. And so this is a proposed subdivision, and essentially what the subdivision does is it separates the property where the cellular tower is from the remainder of the tract. The owner is selling the property and would like to retain the cellular tower, and so essentially the lot covers the existing ground lease that's in place, and which, if you look on the plat exhibit, they're proposing 50 feet of frontage onto Pearl Street, and then 70 feet of lot depth. And so that lot depth is what's deficient per the zoning ordinance, and so that's what you're reviewing this evening. And so again, our minimum lot dimensions are put in place in order to create orderly and predictable, efficient development. They're also meant to safeguard and enhance property values, protect public and private investment by preventing landowners to overcrowd property, and then allowing for adequate access and spacing between buildings. And so the lot dimensions are based on the zoning district in which the property is subject to. So this property was rezoned to R4, at least a portion of it was, last month actually, and a portion that the cell tower sits on is R4. And so when we look at the zoning ordinance, those lot dimensions again are 50 feet wide and then 100 feet deep. And this is a typo on your screen. Actually, no, that is correct. I was looking at something different. So 50 by 100, the applicant is proposing 50 by 70, and so it does also result in a deficient lot area. And so again, whenever we're looking at this is an existing cell tower. Typically, subdivisions are intended to prepare property for future development, and so thus the standards are in order to allow for developable property. This property is already developed. It has a cellular tower on it. It is not intended for redevelopment. And special purpose lots such as these that are intended for utilities such as drainage, water, sewer, those aren't really subject or shouldn't be subject to the same kind of development, to the same dimensions or standards as other lots because their intended use is different. And so staff finds that this is a unique circumstance because this is a special purpose. It's not for development. It is intentionally to preserve the integrity of the cellular tower. Again, these are some photos of the surrounding area. There's an apartment complex located just to the south. And then to the east is a area that's been developed with a mix of uses. So it's got single-family, duplex, and multifamily, but essentially the surrounding area is developed except for the vacant tract immediately to the north. As part of this process, we do send letters to all the property owners within 200 feet. With this process, we sent 13 letters. To date, we haven't received any responses. I think we may have gotten a couple of phone calls just asking for clarification about the request, but we didn't receive any written responses in support or in opposition. The conditions for approval are outlined on your screen, and we did go through those in detail in the staff report, and I'm happy to get into the weeds if you guys have any questions. But essentially, we found that the unique circumstance or hardship that's affecting the property is that this is essentially a special purpose lot for that utility, for that cellular tower, which is the grounds for approval in staff's recommendation. Oh, I'm sorry. And that concludes our presentation. The applicant is available if you have any questions. Ed Pohl is here representing the applicant. And with that, I'll conclude staff's presentation and open it up for questions from the board before we open the public hearing.
Does anybody have questions for staff? No? If not, we can hear from the applicant if they wish to present.
Good afternoon, Ed Poole, Charles Poole Real Estate, representing D.W. Clark Land Investments, the current owner of the property. This property is under contract, and the current owner would like to retain the location of the cell tower. And so this will be replatted by administrative plat, Lot 1 and Lot 2. Lot 1 would be the remaining of the property, Lot 2 would be the cell tower. And so the reason for, I know you probably think, well, why 30 feet? Got to give you a little background on what's happened so far. The developer intends to put an apartment complex there, and so we applied for zoning change through planning and zoning and then city council, and both planning and zoning and city council recommended strongly that the current owner the new owner take the portion of the property that is in the floodplain and floodway and leave it agricultural zoning to protect the creek. Well, that's almost 40% of the property. And so in the floodplain, a developer can do a parking lot, they can do a swimming pool, they can do anything without a structure, so it's usable to the developer. And so in order to comply with the request, he agreed to let the 60% be rezoned R4, the 40% stay agriculture, therefore he could not use it. So he had to reduce the number of buildings that he was planning to build. And then in the survey, an extension of Bowie Street popped up on the south boundary, which no one knew existed, including city. And so that's something that actually can't go away. And it's one of those things that I don't know if you can fix it or not, because the city doesn't acknowledge they have it. And so you can't request it to be removed, and they can't quit claim anyway. It's a long story there. So consequently, you can't build where Bowie Street extension is located either. This 30 feet that we're talking about, the current owner, D.W. Clark Land Investments, doesn't want anything but the cell tower location. The developer needs the 30 feet. I think he intends to put dumpsters there. So he's planning to use it, and this would further diminish his development plans. So that's the reason for the request.
So that little strip right there on the south part there really isn't gonna be an orphan tract, cause there's no Bowie Street there.
Well, it's not an orphan tract because the actual property line continues on to where Bowie Street is proposed.
Okay, you know how you
Yeah.
just kinda start,
Right.
you wonder about, okay, now
Right.
what's gonna happen to this little sliver 10
Exactly,
years
but
down the road or something?
that little sliver is not actually the property line. I mean, I don't think Bowie Street's ever planned to extend, but
Yeah, okay.
it's no man's land, basically.
Any other questions for the applicant? All right, thank you, sir. Do we have any public comment? If there is no public comment, then we can close that. Does the board have any questions for staff? Any additional questions for staff? We can do additional conditions on that, can't we? Is that right? As you said, that this would be approved, provided that it wasn't used for residential purposes?
Yes,
an
so the property is zoned R4, and it's also been subject to a specific use permit that's in place until the cell tower goes away. If the board wanted to place more conditions on it to make sure it wouldn't redevelop in the future, you could do that. Staff isn't recommending that because usually these ground leases are for several years, and the multifamily zoning allows for a variety of uses. But yes, if it's the prerogative of the board, you could impose conditions on it to, mitigate any adverse impacts of the new lot.
Cause if the cell tower were to be taken down, then you would still have a non-conforming lot, correct?
Well, it wouldn't be conforming if the zoning board approves it. It would be conforming with approval of the variance.
But if the cell tower was gone, then it would always be able to, you could put something on there. I mean, you
Yes,
could put
ma'am. Yeah, anything that was placed on that lot would still have to meet building setbacks and all of our other dimensional standards. So it wouldn't be an exception to the rest of our development code. We would just recognize it as a lot that could be developed as something else. More than likely, I would imagine that the adjacent owner would just acquire that property and include it. 'Cause there's not a whole lot else you can do with it.
I don't imagine he wants the cell tower down, he's leasing it.
It is a long-term lease, yeah.
Do you know how long the lease is for?
I do not, but, Yeah, so, yes. For those who couldn't hear, Ed said it was 20-year lease.
Any further questions for staff or the applicant? If not, does anyone want to make a motion?
I would be fine with making a motion that we grant the variance for Lot 12, City Block 50.
I second.
Any discussion? If there's no discussion, then we can vote. Mr. Wheeler, you want to start us off there?
I say, granted.
Yes, I agree.
Oh, I guess I should have repeated that. The motion is to approve the variance as requested. Excuse me.
Yeah, I approved it then.
Yeah. I say yes.
Yes.
Agreement.
Okay. The motion carries, 5-0. If there is nothing else, then we will adjourn. It is now 4:16.
you.